Now to an update from Los Angeles County on the deadly helicopter crash that killed NBA great Kobe Bryant and 8 others yesterday. The group was flying from Orange County up to Thousand Oaks for a youth basketball tournament when that helicopter went down in very foggy conditions about 9:45 yesterday morning. A short time ago, the NTSB held a news conference, and they said the pilot in this case had been approved to fly under special visual flight rules, allowing him to continue with that limited visibility.
Okay, so let's talk more about today's developments. We're joined by Julianne Fox, pilot and aviation accident expert. Julianne, thank you so much for being here. Those rules, what exactly does that mean? And why would the pilot of a chopper be allowed to fly in these types of conditions?
Well, it wouldn't just be a pilot of a helicopter. But when you're transitioning controlled airspace, you have to have a certain amount of visibility, and you have to have the clouds at a certain height. And if that doesn't exist, there's a special clearance you can request that, not requiring you to have an instrument flight plan or an instrument clearance, you can transition that controlled airspace with only 1,000 feet of the height of the clouds and less on the visibility. And so the pilot was wanting to transition the Van Nuys and the Burbank airspace, and to do so visually with keeping visual references to operate from. They needed to have that clearance.
Okay, so let's talk about the conditions, because this was very thick fog, according to the early reports here. How easy is it for a helicopter pilot to get disoriented in thick fog?
That's a good question. So we have different types of pilots. We have pilots that only fly based on visual references, so they have to be able to see the hillsides, the roads, the horizon. We have other pilots that get training and are allowed to fly just by their instruments, so they don't have to be able to see outside to transition, for example, that airspace. But they would require to be on an instrument flight plan and have an instrument clearance, which we know in this case, or at least we're learning based on the facts that are coming out, that aircraft did not have.
Okay, there seem to be a lot of questions about how low this chopper was flying. Explain to us why that happened, and then also that the pilot was circling for 12 minutes. And when I heard that today from the NTSB, I thought, why do that? Why not just go ahead and land at that moment? Because it appears as though the conditions are getting worse, not better.
Sure. So both of those airports, as I understand the facts, as they're coming out, were operating in instrument meteorological conditions. And so they were requiring planes that were taking off and landing to be flying by their instruments and to be qualified and credentialed to fly solely by their instruments in the airplanes and not have to see outside, only for let's say, a 200-foot 200 feet ceiling and a half-mile visibility if it was a certain type of approach. But in this case, we had VFR traffic, a pilot that was flying by visual flight references and was required to be able to see outside. He was trying to transition that airspace that was under instrument control. Right. And so there were other aircraft in the vicinity, so he needed to wait. To wait, he started doing a circle outside of that airspace.
According to some of the early reports, the chopper had a rapid descent of about 4,000 feet a minute. Does that suggest anything to you about what may have taken place?
Well, so one of the causes of helicopter accidents in weather conditions consistent with what we have today is when a pilot gets disoriented due to either visual illusions or vestibular illusions. Just like, for example, when you're in an elevator and you go up really quickly and the elevator stops, you still get sensation from your ears that you're moving. The same thing happens in an aircraft. And so the sensations you get from your ears and the seat of your pants when you've got different G's or different movement, that can be misleading, inaccurate, and completely 100% conflict with what you would have gotten visually had you been able to see outside, or from your instruments if you were proficient at extracting that information and creating a picture in your head.
So when you look at the information that has come out thus far, what does it sort of tell you about what happened?
So the questions I would think the FAA and the NTSB would be asking and what they would be looking for, they mentioned in their press release they're going to have a human performance aspect to this investigation. That happens to be my expertise. They will be looking at what kind of training did that pilot have? Were they instrument qualified? What kind of proficiency did they have? And not just were they legally current, but how recent was their experience flying by instruments alone and without autopilot? So what we know about pilots and their ability to create that picture in their head that we talked about is it's just like tennis. You have to continually practice that tennis stroke to stay proficient and good. You have to do the same thing with an instrument scan. So you can have the most qualified pilot, and if they don't practice, they're not going to be very good at doing it.
All right, Julianne Fox, aviation expert, we appreciate your
Yes,
insight.
thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
me.
very much.